when do you have time though to do a podcast?
On the weekends, because I stopped working after like 7:30 p.m. I just don't do it. I don't have to. There's no pressure. It's all about like being able to do work efficiently, not in bulk.
Yeah. So, when did you leave the Army, and then what was your next move after leaving the Army?
Word. So I spent 21 months in Afghanistan. I was there from June 2012 to March of 2014, like 21 months. And I worked at this really, really interesting command. It was like the headquarters of all special operations for all the militaries that were there. And like I was one of the first, like we built the command. I was like one of the first founding 50 people, and I have like the paddle in my living room. That's what that shit is. Yeah, it was interesting because very young around all of these people who do like global strategy day in and day out for their life, right? Like that's all they do. They eat and breathe how the world interacts with America in so many different ways. And so I think having that vision opened me up to see how I could solve problems in the communities that I come from with that same type of perception and perspective. And so when my deployment was over, I went to a consulting firm that primarily worked with education companies, but I was still in the reserves. So my reserve contract ended like 2017, and I think one of the first things I did was like eat an edible. I think I slept like 2 days. No, I mean, it was just, like, it's when you get out the reserves, there's no, like, grand thing. It's kind of like, okay, I don't have to go to drill this month. Like, it's not, like, a big thing. But when I transitioned, I was at Microsoft still, and so I just, like, transitioned away from that life. I was like, no, I'm not going to use my clearance anymore. Like, I want to be a human, and I want to build solutions for the things I think are important. And I want to have the freedom and the dexterity to do that. And so that's kind of, like, where I ended up at. Also, before I went to Microsoft, I lived in Japan for a while. So after I came home, I worked in Atlanta for a while, and then I went and worked on a project between the US and Japanese government. So essentially what happened was kind of like the US-Puerto Rico situation, where they're like in some kind of government agreement, but like Puerto Rico's got the shit into the stick. It's kind of like how it is with Japan and this island named Okinawa. So like Okinawa has its own governor, but they're like under the Japanese government. But the island of Okinawa has like, it's like a whole bunch covered in like US military bases. It has like most of the US military bases in that region. And so the island was like, all right, America, you can go. You gotta go home. You gotta get the hell up out of here. And the Japanese government was like, you can't actually decide that. Like, we're gonna actually let them build more bases and like destroy your coral reef and like your World Heritage sites along the way. And so it became a battle legally, politically, socially, globally, about who has rights to let the US military move bases on this island. So I went there and I worked on the project between the US and Japanese government on the US side, and I built data management systems, programs, processes for them to like share their plans with each other securely, because the main protest people were doing, they're like hacking and leaking the plans, which was like set the project back by years. You have to like redesign everything. So I like went out there and worked on that with a bunch of like really, really, really awesome civil engineers. And then I went to Microsoft, so yeah.
So I got 2 more questions I want to open up to the crowd. But how did you end up at Microsoft?
A recruiter DM'd me on LinkedIn. Before they bought it, yeah. So she actually was a woman of color, and I was doing some really bad, for anyone who's in the military, some really bad OPSEC things. I had like my clearance level in my title. And so she was like Googling my skill set and the clearance level. And I popped up and she was like, yo, you gotta get in touch with me. And that was like August. And I sat there and was like, Microsoft, talk to me. For like 4 months before I replied. And so I hit her up in like November. And then started the interview process and got an offer in December. And they interviewed me remotely while I was in Japan. I did like a code screen over Skype, and then they paid me to move back to the US. So yeah, it was pretty dope. It was literally just like somebody was like, I'm gonna take a chance and put you in front of people. And I feel like that happens a lot. Like when you set the intentions, things kind of like fall in place, you know?
Yeah, we were just talking about how water flows, right? Yeah. Next question. I think you already answered it earlier, but what does the tech trap house mean to you?
I think it's hella important in tech, like, because technology right now, especially the cutting edge stuff, is so wrapped up in a particular set of language. Like, it's very academic, it's very mathematical, it's very, like, difficult to access if you haven't studied those things. Like me, I've gone up to, like, Calc 3 and done linear algebra, so, like, I can access that stuff. But to, like, understand things about computer vision, and I've been talking about this to a couple of people tonight, like, there's a research paper that came out that showed that if you're trying to do, like, identification, right? And I'm gonna get to my point, I promise. I told you guys I talk in a particular way. But this research paper that came out that showed for like computer vision, which is like using cameras to see in artificial intelligence, right? So like facial recognition is a type of computer vision. Telling if it's like a cat or a dog is a type of computer vision. Anything visual is computer vision. And so like this idea of facial recognition with police, and this is 100% personal opinion, waiver, personal opinion. Like, you think of these cameras, right? You think of like, well, what if they don't train it right and it misrecognizes someone because their data set isn't good, right? But like, imagine a world where everything's 100% perfect and they have the exact data set that can like tell identical twins apart from the computer vision. Maybe we'd be a little bit more willing to accept that. But the problem is that if there's like steam on the camera, it completely fucks the whole system up. If there's a scratch on the camera lens, it fucks the system up. If you introduce intentional noise into the camera, so if I put something over it, I can fuck its identification system up. But the thing is, I can talk about it like that here, but that information's wrapped up in a research paper, right? And so I think this space is important because you can bridge that gap. And there's none of that happening there. We don't have spaces we can come to regularly to just like be put on game about tech shit. It just doesn't exist. And a lot of these spaces that do fireside chats, they still are like, so we read a research paper that talked about the way to detect sentiment in text classifiers in a way that isn't discriminatory against gender expression. Can you talk about the paper that you released at the IEEE? Can you talk about how you think that's going to impact the future of natural language processing research? And y'all be in here like, what the fuck? I'm telling you, most of the time I feel the same way too. That's why I have coffee with the researchers. I'm like, okay, but what the fuck? Still don't get it. I got 20 more minutes. Can you help me get it? And so that's kind of how he, like this researcher who did this research, that's how he explained it to me. And so it's hella important that we have spaces like this, like Tech Trap House, that bridge the gap between culture and information so that we can have better access to this stuff. Because whether we like it or not, these technologies are being used. If it's irresponsible or not, I don't know. That's for us to decide. But in order for us to decide, we have to first be aware. So again, I'm very appreciative. I come with gratitude for what you guys are here curating. For what you guys' set up is hella dope.
Appreciate that. This mic is on fire. I don't know if I can hold it any longer. But all right, so I'm gonna open it up. Nah.